Welcome once again, my fellow manipulators of digital fate. I'm Richie, this is Capricorn, and MagicCon Amsterdam is in full swing right now. The Pro Tour is happening over there as we speak, and they decided to release a whole bunch of new info for the next 3 sets coming to Magic the Gathering. Not just 1, but 3. Now, BloomBurrow here is the next set that's being released. Spoiler season for this set officially starts this week, so there's going to be a ton more spoilers on the way for this set. Look forward to that. But we also got our first spoilers for Duskmourn, which is coming at the end of September. Now, I'm not going to cover that in this video, but I'm going to put up another video very soon, very quickly, as soon as I finish this one, where we cover all of the new Duskmourn spoilers, and that set looks kind of crazy as well. And then we had a third set officially launched, and we were speculating about them launching this third set at the end of the year. So it's nice to see that they announced it, because BloomBurrow is coming out a month earlier than we normally have the third set in a year come out. And so isn't Duskmourn. Duskmourn comes out the end of September, when normally we see a November set. So I was speculating a lot that we were going to see another set that they haven't announced come out at the end of the year, and I was right. And that set is called Foundations, and it's sort of like a core set. And again, I'm going to cover that in another video that I'm going to film as soon as I'm done with this one. But this video right here, we're going to focus on the BloomBurrow spoilers, go over all of those cards announced, and like I said, tons more spoilers for this set in particular are coming just mere days away from me putting this video up, so sit tight for those as well. So let's just dig right in, because we've got tons of stuff to go over throughout the course of these 3 videos, and I want to get started. So first up, we've got Carrot Cake. This is 1 white and 1 for an artifact food. It is a common, and when it enters and when you sacrifice it, you get to create a 1/1 white rabbit creature token and scry 1. You can also pay to tap this and sacrifice it to gain 3 life. So it's essentially a food. It functions like a food, except it's a food that gives you a 1/1 when you play it, and gives you a 1/1 when you sack it. I think that's pretty good, especially for a common, and it's definitely a signpost common to me to indicate that they're going pretty deep into tokens in this set, at least in white, at least with, you know, rabbits as a creature type, making lots of tokens. And I just think this card is really cool, so I'm glad this exists. But let's move on. Next up, we've got Pearl of Wisdom. This is 1 blue and 2 for a sorcery. It draws you 2 cards, and then it costs 1 less to cast if you control an otter. Now, this isn't like crazy good. It is a common, right? It's a divination, 3 mana draw 2, but the fact that it can be a little bit better than divination if you're playing otters does make it worth considering. And what I like most about this card is the fact that it makes it pretty clear to me that they're going very deep into creature types, into tribal and kindred themes for this set in particular. And I think a lot of the mechanics around, like a lot of the limited archetypes, is going to really revolve around different creature types. And that seems really fun to me, so I'm excited to see where else they go with these mechanics. But even this just being a divination that's strictly better if you've got otters is pretty cool, to be completely honest. Next up, we've got Early Winter. This is 1 black and 4 for an instant, and you choose one. You either exile target creature, or target opponent exiles an enchantment they control. So not insanely good. It is expensive, but it's worth noting that it is an instant speed spell, and it also has the ability to get rid of enchantments in black, which isn't always very easy to do. It kind of reminds me as a very, very powered down Invoke Despair, and when I say very, I mean very, obviously, because it's a common. But getting the option to make them sack an enchantment is nice on your instant speed exile removal. So this could be, you know, your 22nd, 23rd card in limited if you're desperate for removal. Next up, we've got Might of the Meek. 1 red mana for an instant. Target creature gains trample until end of turn. It also gets +1/+0 until end of turn if you control a mouse. And then you draw a card. So this is really good in mouse tribal. This is even more evidence that The creature types, the tribal and kindred archetypes themselves are going to be a huge foundation of this set, and a huge foundation of the archetypes within Limited particularly. And, you know, if you do have a mouse, this card is really good. Getting to replace itself with a card, but also give +1/+0 and trample can be kind of nuts, right? For 1 mana at instant speed, so I really like this. Again, it needs to be in a mouse deck. I wonder just how many good mice there are going to be. If there's maybe a new mono red or 2-color aggro deck that involves a lot of mice, where a card like this could see play. It's very interesting. Next up, we've got Sunshower Druid. 1 green mana for a 0/2 frog druid. And when Sunshower Druid enters, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, and you gain 1 life. Not bad for your 1-drop, especially as an uncommon, right? You get an 0/2 body. You could put the +1/+1 counter on itself. So it could just be a 1/3 for 1 that gains you a life and also counts as a modified creature. Also triggers anything that cares about counters. That seems pretty good, but the fact that you can put the counter wherever you want seems super, super fun, especially in Limited. I like where they're going with these mechanics, you know, with Limited in mind, of course. Next up, we've got a cycle of lands. I believe these are all the uncommon lands, the first of which is Lupinflower Village. It can tap for a colorless, or tap for a white mana, but spend it only to cast a creature spell. And then you can pay 1 white and 1, tap it, sacrifice Lupinflower Village, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal a bat, bird, mouse, or rabbit card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So really, really good land for tribal decks in particular. Pretty interesting ability to be able to generate white mana, but only for a creature spell. It means that you could go wide with creatures. You could go wide with creatures and not have a problem generating the colored mana that you need, right? And just get access to the sack ability as pure upside to like a plains. Just have to be very careful about how you play your non-creature spells. So it definitely incentivizes a very specific sort of deck building, which I find really interesting. And then obviously the card's going to be a lot better if you're in like bat tribal, bird tribal, mouse tribal, or rabbit tribal because of what it can fetch. Be interesting to see if the rest of the cycle is similar to this. So let's check it out. Next up, we've got Lilypad Village. This also taps for 1 colorless and can tap for 1 blue if you spend that mana only to cast a creature spell. So once again, we have these untapped lands, right? They don't come into the battlefield tapped, but they only generate the blue mana if you're playing a creature, and they otherwise give you colorless, which is just really interesting. It's good that it's not a specific creature type that you have to play to get the blue mana. It's not, you know, Cavern of Souls or anything like that. But then again, Cavern of Souls is making a mana of any color, and these are just making 1 specific color. So I'm not 100% sure exactly the best way to slot these into your deck building. It'll be interesting to experiment for sure. And then the extra ability on this land is pay 1 blue, tap, and surveil 2. Activate only if a bird, frog, otter, or rat entered the battlefield under your control this turn. So this is pretty good. We got the castle back in the first Eldraine set that allowed you to scry 2, and that costs 4 mana. So the fact that this costs just 1 mana and lets you surveil 2, which is strictly better than scrying most of the time, is kind of cool. It does have the stipulation you need to be in one of those 4 creature types to really make it work, which is interesting. But unlike the white land, you don't have to sacrifice this one, which is also interesting. So it'll be cool to see where this card lands. Next up, we have Mudflat Village. This is the black land in that cycle, so it taps for a colorless or for a black mana if you cast a creature spell with that mana. You can pay 1 black and 1, tap it, sacrifice Mudflat Village, return target bat, lizard, rat, or squirrel card from your graveyard to your hand. So once again, 4 different creature types. This one is another sack effect. It just lets you get back your best thing that is one of those creature types later in the game when you have an abundance of mana and you don't need the land anymore. So I think this one's pretty cool. But next up, we've got Rockface Village. This taps for 1 colorless mana, taps for 1 red if you use the mana to play a creature spell, and then you can pay 1 red and tap it. Target lizard, mouse, otter, or raccoon you control gets +1/+0 and gains haste until end of turn. Activate only as a sorcery. It's actually a pretty cool ability, especially a little bit later in the game when you're running out of gas and maybe you top deck one of those creature types. You can just jam it and you probably have some extra mana, so you have no problem just dumping it into this, giving the thing +1/+0 and haste, and getting extra value out of that, you know, top deck later in the game. So I think this one's pretty cool. I like it. It reinforces, you know, red wanting to be as aggressive as possible. And then the last one in this cycle is Oak Hollow Village, a land that taps for a colorless or taps for a green mana if we use that mana to cast a creature spell. And then you can pay 1 green and tap it to put a +1/+1 counter on each frog, rabbit, raccoon, or squirrel you control that entered the battlefield this turn. So, really interesting one here that you kind of have to build around a little bit more. You want to be able to get as many creatures of those types onto the battlefield in one turn, so that, you know, paying the 1 mana and tapping this is getting as much of a return on that investment as possible and getting as many counters out. So it'll be really interesting to see how to balance, you know, getting a lot of creatures of those types onto the battlefield and still leaving mana left over to activate this ability. It is pretty powerful though. At the very least, it's just like if you pay 2 more mana for your next frog, rabbit, raccoon, or squirrel that you play, it just enters with an extra +1/+1 counter, which is a really cool mana sink for a little bit later in the game to juice up some of your creatures and just make them better than they otherwise would be. So, pretty cool card. And that brings us to the last card of the day, Salvation Swan, which is the one rare that they showed off, which is pretty cool. This is a 3/3 bird cleric with flash and flying for 1 white and 3. Whenever Salvation Swan or another bird you control enters, you exile up to 1 target creature you control without flying, and then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control with a flying counter on it at the beginning of the next end step. This is crazy. A 3/3 flash flyer that flickers your dude is pretty good to begin with, but the fact that the flicker dude not only comes back, triggers whatever ETB it has, but also gets a flying counter and becomes an evasive win condition is pretty nuts. And then you add on top of that the fact that you can also trigger this when other birds enter the battlefield, and that just seems even crazier, right? You could even exile the Salvation Swan itself if you wanted to set up some really weird loops with 2 of them. There's just a lot of potential for stuff like this, and I'm really loving the blink and flickering effects that we already have in Standard that are still going to be in Standard after rotation. So the idea of brewing some kind of crazy new blink deck using the stuff that we have right now, plus Salvation Swan, and who knows what else is coming down the line, seems really interesting to me. So I kind of love it. We've also got an alternate art for the Salvation Swan here, which looks pretty cool. This almost looks like a storybook sort of frame, similar to some of the stuff that we've seen in Eldraine in the past, which is pretty interesting and kind of fitting. But regardless, really cool alternate art here. And that's gonna bring us to the end of the video, guys. That's it. But like I said, we do have that brand new set that was announced that's supposed to almost be like a core set called Foundations. So I've got a video coming on that super quick, right on the tail of this one. And then we have another video coming with all the new Duskmourn spoilers that dropped at the event as well. So some crazy videos on the way with some crazy new cards. So look forward to that. If you found any value in this video, please like it. It does help me out a ton. The more people like this video, the more this video gets out to more people, the more people see it, and then my channel continues to grow. So if you could please do me that favor and like the video and subscribe if you're new so you never miss an upload. I got tons of spoiler content on the way. Like I said, those 2 videos are coming up next, and tons of BloomBurrow spoilers coming next week as soon as a spoiler season officially starts. And then lots of crazy deck techs coming as well. I've got some really cool, like, let's get ready for rotation standard deck techs that are just waiting to pop up on the channel. But I wanted to make sure I got the spoiler stuff out to you guys first so that you guys could see it as soon as possible. So once again, thank you so much. Like, subscribe. I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks so much for checking out my channel. I'd like to give a huge shout out to all of my patrons over at Patreon. Without you guys, this channel would not be possible, so honestly, thank you from the bottom of my heart for all of your contributions. If you haven't yet, like and subscribe. The more likes we get and the quicker we get them, the bigger this channel will grow and the faster it will grow. I'd love nothing more than this channel to become something very special for you guys, but it's entirely up to you how fast that happens. Also, if you'd like more deck techs, that's somewhere over there. And if you'd like to see what else the channel's been up to lately, that's somewhere up that way. Also, subscribe, circle below, do all the things.